Okay, in this video we're going to discuss briefly how to set up a vacuum filtration. And after you've done a crystallization, you're typically going to need to filter your solid, your recrystallized solid, away from whatever solvent you use to do that. And to do this in organic lab, we use vacuum filtration because it's faster and more efficient than just waiting for gravity filtration. So all vacuum filtrations are going to have to be done in the hood because that's where our vacuum system is set up. The vacuum system is at the sides of the hood. The yellow port should have a hose connected to it. The yellow port is the vacuum. The knobs for vacuum are on the outside. They're color coded, so vacuum is yellow, just like the port inside is yellow. At the back of the hood, you're going to see a vacuum trap, and the vacuum trap should not be disconnected. You should not rearrange any of the hoses. So the port for the vacuum line goes down to the vacuum trap, and then there's a secondary hose that comes off of the vacuum trap that you will hook onto your actual vacuum flask, filter flask. Do not hook the filter flask directly to the vacuum port because if you draw liquid into our vacuum lines, you can damage the very expensive vacuum pumps that run it. So do not rearrange any of the hoses. If something's not connected correctly, find the instructor and have them assist you in correctly attaching the hoses. Alright, so when you're ready, what you're going to need is several things. You're going to need a vacuum flask, sidearm flask like this one. You're going to need a Hirsch funnel, just like this. You're going to need your sample in the liquid, of course. And the last thing that you'll need is filter paper. And the filter paper can be found in this container, usually by one of the balances. Typically it's the center balance. And inside there are literally hundreds of pieces of filter paper. They're very small and very thin, and they can be quite challenging to get separated. But it is very important that when you select one, when you get one, you need to make sure that it's just a single piece. And so you want to make sure, run your finger along the edge and try to make sure that it's just a single one, because if it's more than one piece of filter paper, what can easily happen is they can get plugged up and your filtration won't run, and you'll just be sitting there for minutes and waiting for the liquid to run through, and it won't happen. Alright, so you have all of your equipment. You want to make sure that the glassware is clean, because if something goes wrong and you have to refilter, you don't want to run your liquid down into a dirty flask. So make sure everything is clean. You'll need to clamp the filter flask into the hood, and the reason for that is because it's very small and light, and it will not simply stand in the bottom of the hood once you connect the vacuum line. The vacuum line will knock it over, and you just don't want to take the chance of everything falling over while you're trying to do a filtration. So do yourself a favor and clamp it. You'll put your Hirsch funnel in, and then you'll put your filter paper down, and you need to try, if you'll be able to see it, but you need to try to get the filter paper to lay over all the holes, kind of center it. And then before you try to add anything to the flask or the filter, you want to turn the vacuum on so that it's pulling a vacuum. And what that will do is it will set the filter paper down, so when you pour your sample in, it doesn't just push the filter paper off and everything runs down into the bottom. So turn the vacuum on, and then after you turn the vacuum on, what you want to do also is you want to add a single drop of the liquid that you're using in the filtration onto the filter paper. And the reason for that is to further set the filter paper. Alright, so once you've got it set, the vacuum is running, you're going to take your sample, your crystals. You want to make sure that it stays cold right up until the moment that you're actually doing the filtration, so leave it in your ice bath, and then when you're ready, pull it out, and then what I do is I swirl it to try to get all of the solids suspended so that when I pour, the solids come out and don't just stick to the sides. Now, no matter how good you are or how much you swirl, solids are going to stick to the sides. You see, it's stuck to the sides of mine. Okay, there's a couple ways of trying to get it out. Everybody likes and wants to use more liquid. The problem with that is, one, you already had a bunch of liquid in there, it didn't take it out, didn't get it out. Adding more liquid is not going to do you any favors. It's just going to keep sticking to the sides. Secondly, it's going to dissolve the solid. The solid is somewhat soluble in the liquids that we do this crystallization with. So, in my opinion, the best way to get the solids out, even though it's not perfect, is to take a spatula and to get it out like you get peanut butter out. Just kind of scoop it around and put it onto the sides of the filter as best you can. Now, no matter how hard you try or how much you do, you're always going to have a little bit left over. The rule of thumb is every time you do a transfer in chemistry lab, you lose a little bit of your product. So you can keep scraping at it, you can keep rinsing at it, but you're not going to ever get it all out. You can try and should try to get as much as you can out, but at some point you're just not going to get any more out. So once you think you've gotten everything you can out, if the procedure says that you can do rinses, that's the time that you do rinses. So you do your rinse, and then what you should do is let air, the vacuum, run across the crystals for a couple minutes, 2 or 3 minutes, to try to get as much of the liquid away from the solid as you can. Then what you should do is not turn off the vacuum yet. When you're done, the first thing you should do is disconnect the vacuum line, and then turn off the vacuum at the hood. And then you have your solid. Take your solid and put it on your watch glass or in your beaker, whatever you're going to do to set it in your drawer to let it dry until the following lab when you can do the actual masses and melting points. Okay, so that's a vacuum filtration.